Here we are. It's been it took like a week to chill out because life is crazy, and it's even crazier right now. The DNC is horrible. Not that we didn't already know that. Not gonna get too into that today, hopefully. Probably skim across it a little bit though, but I am super excited, as always. I'm always excited to have on this show today Hannah Spaulding, who is left Twitter legend in New Hampshire, co-chair of the Southern New Hampshire DSA, and somebody that I'm really excited to speak to because she's a Christian socialist, and I think that's a really important perspective that doesn't often get included in left discourse, or maybe does, but not. It's I think it's good for the secular people to hear some of that kind of stuff. So without further ado, here we are. Hannah, how are you?
Hi, doing good. Still waking up, but you know.
Yeah, I feel you. It is a little on the early side. I've been having a problem going to bed like at a reasonable time lately. Like I don't know what the issue is, and then I end up like body clock just waking me up, too early, and then groggy all day.
Yeah, I've become one of those crazy people who like wakes up really early to go on a walk, and it's nice, but like every night I have to be like, you should get to bed actually at like an old person at 9:30, and then I get to bed at like as like a high school student at like 10:38.
Yeah.
Which isn't quite run, but
yeah, it's not as bad, but I really need to like get myself motivated to shoot for that 10:30 bedtime so that it's gonna be
right. Yeah, I believe me, I used to do that all the time, and like it's only because when I actually started working retail, I had earlier shifts, and I was like, oh, can't stay up to 2 a.m. when you have a shift the next day
at like
so
6. Yeah,
so you do end up basically doing that when you have a closing shift and then an opening one.
right. So
Good time.
yeah, for real. It's like, man, labor is savage. And I guess like
really
so in I guess like in the vein of labor, right? Since that's like the probably like one of if not the biggest component here, like I guess I'll just hop right into the questions that I had for you today. So like it's like clearly a challenge to get around historical red baiting that Americans have just like been inundated with, and like I personally haven't had an opportunity to attend a DSA meeting for like a wide variety of reasons, but like I do want to kind of like I want to use this space as a way to sort of digitize some of the conversation about like how is the DSA here in New Hampshire trying to overcome that like historical red baiting narrative that's like just like seems to serve as such a block to progress. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I know we've had a lot of success from like we've had people who were volunteering with the Bernie campaign in New Hampshire that have been brought in. And I think a lot of it is, I guess, trying to speak to the issues, that really directly impact people, like, issues with health insurance. We're working, I believe we're right now getting back in doing stuff related to housing, which is a huge issue in New Hampshire. I know it impacts me personally. I've been living with my parents pretty much since I graduated since I graduated high school, because I went to college at Southern New Hampshire, and it just didn't make sense to go on campus since it was close enough. And there's just it's very unaffordable to find any place to live, especially if you're working in New Hampshire. When you work retail, you get like $9 an hour. So we try to speak to those things. I think that it can be really helpful to sort of show how socialism is about dealing with those problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really great way to get past, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I think that's. I always try to. I mean, when I'm talking to folks, I always try really hard to focus on that uniting issue of economics because
Mm-hmm.
it touches all of us, and it's not to say like identity issues aren't a problem, like it's kind of that Adolf Reed critique. And like I know this is obviously getting into like kind of weird territory because there was the whole debacle with him not being allowed to speak at a DSA event, but that whole concept of like you cannot meaningfully make a change if you're only going to focus on the identity component, whether it's like on religious or racial or gender lines. Like you obviously have to do that part, but if you're not going to give equal weight to the economic side of things, none of it's going to work because you're building on quicksand,
Right. I mean, it's like acting like the solution is going to come from like having the CW cast more diverse shows. It's like obviously it would be nicer if the lineups weren't like 99% white people with like the occasional person of color cast in. Like that's obviously speaks to the issues in like casting departments and stuff like that. But just solving that without like dealing with the prison population, without dealing with the sort of material stuff that is at the root, it's just putting a nicer face on something that's inherently broken.
Right. And I think as I look back on it, right, like I've been trying to read up a little more on like Frankfurt School guys, like just for the sake of doing it, because it's like it's worth knowing what people thought before us. And
right.
The thing I always think is interesting about some of the stuff that they put forward, and I mean I plan on talking about it more extensively in a different show, but like I keep coming back to Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle and the way that he describes like we all know it and feel it, right? Like it's a thing that we live and experience just in real time and often don't have the language to describe it, but it's like the oppression of a zeitgeist, it's like that societal thing, like the thing that money represents, it's like the other half of it. And it's like that, we always like a lot of times more like in a more secular context, we'll talk about like how neoliberalism is really good at like taking a left idea and chewing it up and turning it into a capitalist idea and spitting it back out again. And and I think it's important to understand that like that's just a microcosm of a larger object, like intangible object, that I'm not even going to try to reify, that that basically just exists and imposes itself on all of us. And we're like, our labor is an effort to like for that system to observe and experience itself. Like it doesn't like there's no one cares about us. You know what I mean? Like there's no like there's no mind for whether or not this is good for people. It's like
oh yeah. I always think back to the time the supervisor, the one of the higher up people at the retail store I worked at, we were talking and he just goes, oh yeah, management doesn't give a shit about us. Right. And people, a few of my other coworkers were like, what? And I was like, he's being honest.
Yeah, like it's that like cold reality. And I think like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the target of an organization like DSA is to try and like get in there and be like, okay, this is actually the problem, right? Like this is this is the underlying thread. Like if we trace it all the way back down every single line, it's going to come down to who wanted to make a buck, and like that kind of follow the money idea. And DSA in a lot of ways, it's like, I mean, like, first off, y'all aren't like straight up communists, so there's distinction, like in between movements, so everybody has kind of a different idea of how they want to get something done. And I mean, like, Bosch Carson Cara has repeatedly said that, like, he doesn't believe in like putting every single market out and like into like a like completely demarketizing everything and having government issue fun time stuff. Like, there's space in between, and it's about saying like, hey, there are basic necessities that we all need, like shelter. To your point about housing, it's like we need homes, we need a place to live. And this is, if we're not focusing on just addressing those base needs without any discriminatory conceptualizations of priority, then we're not going to fix anything. So, like, get on board,
Right. Yeah. And I think a big part of it, I really do think, is that people know that they're being screwed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had so many conversations in the jobs that I've had where we talked about how the boss was getting all sorts of money and we're getting like pennies to his millions.
Mm-hmm.
I remember us cleaning up a bunch of hangars, and we were joking that we should just mail them out to the CEO and say, you clean them up.
Yeah.
People know, they're not stupid. They know that they're being screwed over, but right. That's just a fact. And it's being like, yes, that fact is true, but there's something that can be done about it that I think is something to get through.
Right.
And it's very important to get through.
Yeah. And just like connecting that to like, hey, as a group, we have power,
Right.
Like,
yeah. It's a lot of it is doing that, pointing out that we have issues in common, even with all of our differences, and being able to tie together, those struggles, like the efforts to, point out the similarities between the, horrible stuff that happened in Ferguson, that's happening all across America, and also how you see that in Palestine.
Yeah, Palestine is huge. I always try to remind folks that, like, hey, like, BAE Systems is like a major provider of jobs here in this state.
Oh yeah.
And
when I was job hunting, my mom, was like, oh, hey, you're good at social media. They have a social media job available at BAE.
Like, yeah, no, I'm good.
I was like, not for me, thanks.
Yeah, and it's it's just kind of like we don't necessarily draw the connection to, like, okay, we're making weapon utilities that go off and kill people just like us, just kind of far from here, where we don't like see it. If you're not following Free Palestine Twitter, and that's like kind of an issue, you know what I mean? Like, where's
yeah, and you can see the impact on the way that our federal representatives vote on things. It undeniably impacts the way that they respond to, like, anything regarding the military or anything in regards to, like, the defense budget, stuff like that. Like, I joke at this point, there's a terrible vote which a bunch of Democrats voted on that, everybody who has kind of half a brain is like, that's stupid. I'm like, I don't even have to search. I know it's Custer Pappas, Shaheen Hassan. They're going to be on there, and it's definitely because of, like, the presence of BAE. It's part of the local economy.
Yeah, that's a problem with, like, the Democratic establishment that I always want folks to, like, pay attention to a little bit more. Like, please, for the love of God, just like just focus on it for half a second, think about it a little bit, and you'll realize that, like, like, we're like, that's like I guess it bothers me on a moral level because I'm like, you're robbing workers of their right to spend their life doing something morally valuable. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It's, I mean, I know that's probably kind of a stretch, but like at the same time, I'm just like, dude, like we don't have a choice, right? We all have to make rent
Hmm.
or make the mortgage or buy
Right, right.
groceries. Like we have to keep the lights on. And so, and that's like, um, there was a good talk on. I keep bringing this up to people. I should probably tell everyone to just go watch it. But there was a good talk with, um, it was Paul Heidemann, I think is his name, on the Jacobin YouTube, um, and he was like, he spent a bunch of time talking. I think the video is called like why you should be a Marxist or something like that. But he was spending a lot of time talking about like the differences between feudalism and capitalism. And something that I took away from it that was like, in a sense, capitalism is kind of worse because um, in the feudal context, they were producing like you would produce your own bounty, right? And someone would
Right,
come and take a
right.
cut from that bounty, as opposed to and you'd be able to go trade your bounty for other bounties in
Hmm.
town, or your harvest or whatever.
Right, yeah, yeah.
But within a capitalist system, all of that labor is captured before you can see it, and
Hmm.
your boss holds the value and then redistributes it to
Yeah.
you after the fact, so you never even get to like possess the wealth of your own labor. So it's like, so we have less control. like and then
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
I
furthermore,
mean,
we're forced to use that same system of capital to we don't get like it removes our ownership of our space, you know what I mean, or our right to our space, that we then have to go and like purchase it back from our boss, like purchase it back from the market, and like supposedly our labor value is merit based. So naturally, if you work hard enough, you'll have a nice place, but it doesn't quite work like that. So
hmm.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing I think of that's like not exactly the same as that, but when I worked retail, it was awful. I was busy all the time. My legs hurt all the time, but I felt like I was doing something. For like 4 months after I finally got out of retail last November, I worked this data entry job, and it was classic example of a bullshit job. I had no clue really what I was doing. I was, it was just trying to sort of put numbers in where it just, I don't know how to describe it. It was just like, it just felt like a lot of bullshit work that just didn't feel like anything. I felt like a lot of just sitting at my desk listening to stuff, hoping I was doing it right, and half the time I wasn't. And I it was better than my retail job in a lot of ways. I could actually like sit down. The pay was better. A bunch of different stuff. The hours were actually consistent. I never had a night where I closed that night and then opened the next day, etc. But there were ways it was worse, where it just felt pointless. And
Yeah.
it feels like a lot of the like efforts to like the way that people talk about sort of employment and like getting better jobs, there's that element of it too, where we don't really have good work to replace it. It's like
Right.
it's in a lot of cases it feels like you're working you're a cashier in New Hampshire, or you're like doing some sort of data entry or something like that, or you're working in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and like I always think about like, I don't know. I guess I think, I there's part of me that really loves the idea that we're talking about like grocery store workers and like retail folks as essential. I think that's
Mhm.
hilarious that we decide like we're doing that right now, but we're
Right.
not giving hazard pay. like
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like
um
I always, yeah, it's really wild. It's like, I mean, it's classic. It's that like we're gonna call you superheroes, give you a pizza party and like a nice little magnet to put on your fridge, but we're not going to pay you more, even though you're spending all day getting screamed at by people because they had a, coupon that's 3 days past due or whatever.
Oh, I'm just all I can think about now is that like the what is it? The participation trophy problem, right? Like it's a
Yes.
participation trophy problem. It's like all these boomer politicians are trying to like participation trophy folks, and it's like, no, we just want a seat at the table, damn it. Like,
Yeah,
come on, like,
yeah. Oh,
like don't give me a
yeah,
participation trophy, make me participate, and if I fail, don't
yeah.
give me one. Like, like I didn't win.
Right,
Like,
exactly. They're like, looking to the like market basket cashiers who, and they're like, oh, we're so thankful. You guys are superheroes. We have these beautiful signs that we're going to put in front of the store to just commemorate how great you are. And it's like, that's not what they want. They want to be sure that things are as safe as they can be at their workplace. They want to make
right.
sure that if they get COVID, that they're going to be able to like cover the bills while they're sick with it,
Yeah, well, and it's important for folks to remember too that like, especially, maybe it's certainly less true with like smaller businesses, just because oftentimes like the boss will be more connected to the employees. I mean, and again, it depends on the small business, right? But like,
Right.
but in a chain, right? Like say like a grocery store. Like if we're talking about grocery stores, for example, if you go to like
Yeah.
Shaw's, you know what I mean? Like Shaw's is a great example because they're jerks. But they like any safety measures that they're taking, it's not because like despite all of their marketing, it's not because they care about you. Like
Oh, yeah.
it's not at all because they care about the health of their customers or their employees. Like they don't care
Right.
if you're well or not. What they care about is whether or not you're well enough to come spend money. Like that's like it doesn't have anything to do with like the actual well-being of folks. It has to do with like, oh shit, if we don't have enough people coming in and buying product, our sales are going to tank. Like, so
Right, yeah. Or you see it with like the greenwashing that a bunch of gas companies are doing now, where they knew that the stuff they were doing was dangerous and that it would cause an issue. Exxon knew, like in the 70s or
right.
something like that, and they only started turning it around when they realized, ooh, it's going to be bad marketing if we don't do a little bit of a twist and do a little bit of a rebrand here.
Yeah.
It's going to look bad. And they only did that because they know it'll cost them money if they don't. And that's, not any care in the world about the state of the environment or anything like that. I mean, you follow the crazy situation with this guy who is a lawyer. He was a lawyer in this like landmark case in, I believe, Ecuador. I have to look it up again. They basically got him under house arrest because they did a countersuit. It's this insane story. They've got this guy in house arrest. They agreed to go with the lawsuit being in Ecuador, I believe. And then when that happened, they basically countersued and like they accused him of bribing a judge or something like that. But the person who substantiates that has received money from the gas company. So it's a clear frame up.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
is this the thing with Chevron?
It must be Chevron, yeah. It's his name's like Steven Donzinger or something like that.
I think I actually have it.
The lawyer.
Right. Let's see.
Yeah,
here.
It's a crazy story. It's the details with the there we go. The details with like the judge involved in the case against him are insane. It's like this judge who's clearly just completely abusing his position and completely acting like against everything that it should be. And that's proof of, I'm sure Chevron has a nice little Happy Earth Day thing that goes up. But at the same time, this lawyer who the only thing he did was try to help the case of, you know, the people whose land was polluted by Chevron is like stuck in his house because he's in house arrest. So it's like they don't care. They just, you know, go even a little bit beyond the surface. It's there. Or you look into Dow Chemical.
Yeah.
They've got a whole crazy thing where they like they had people who were looking to try and discredit the activists on the ground who
Right.
were trying to get after they had like a chemical explosion. You know, it's you go an inch beneath any of the nice little happy Earth Day things, and it's bad.
Right.
Which that's how they are.
Yeah, and it's like and there's value in understanding the detail, right? Like the like how exactly they go about doing this. Like it's one thing to say like, oh yeah, big oil is trying to insert themselves into the activism process, or they've got, you know, moles, or they're, you know, they have inside people, right? And that sounds kind of conspiratorial, but it's like, and it kind of is like, it kind of actually is like that, but at the same time it's like a dumber version of that almost, like like everybody thinks that it's like super like dude, this shit isn't a spy movie, like you know, like it's just people who are like genuinely lying and deceiving each other, or like, you know, it's
right
like it's very like it's one thing to think about it within that cinematic context, but every time I sit down and I try to think about like dealing with like okay, like what if I'm part of a group and someone tries to infiltrate it, you know what I mean, like, and we develop a really close relationship with this person, and all of a sudden we're betrayed and we have to do damage control, and like that seems like it would feel like through like subjectively imagining having to go through that experience, like that doesn't seem at all like what like some sort of like bigger plot. It's like for these guys in these companies, like it's just an item on a checklist, and then there's like this individual that goes out and does it, and it's so like it's so much like it's centralized, but when it plays out, it has a decentralized kind of feeling to it, like
right
like
I know
yeah, go
I
ahead.
know everybody's sort of feelings are mixed on like whether or not he's innocent, but there's the figure in the documentary Making a Murderer, and the big argument against, you know, against whether or not he's innocent is, you know, but that would require such a big conspiracy, you know. There's like the local cops, the FBI, or that backed him up. And the thing is, it doesn't require that big of a conspiracy oftentimes. It's like 2 or 3 people deciding to stick to their story, and the FBI doesn't even have to be involved. They're just saying, oh yeah, we do believe the local cops. You know,
Right.
yeah, sure. It's them rubber stamping because they're our guys.
Right. It's,
you know,
like,
and
it's
a
a
lot of it
default
is
process. Like it's like everything is set up so that it just falls over naturally. Like that's the problem with the structure itself. Like I think about like
right, yeah. It's like, but when people talk about the police, you know, it's that matter of people being like, the system is broken. It's like, it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's built that way.
Exactly.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Right, precisely. So like I just watched all of like the new Netflix series Immigration Nation, which is savage, and in that like first episode alone, they do like there's so much I'm just doing my job, man. Like you know, like we're just part of it. Like I just show up to work and I just do what they tell me I gotta do, and like these are the rules, and like. You realize like every single one of these people thinks that they're just like a tiny part of it, and there's nothing that they can do.
Right.
And it's like, and then it's all about the federal government, you know, like, oh, well, you know, the president makes all the decisions. But it's like, yeah, but like, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, like, did you forget that your labor has power? Like, you can withhold that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Like we're so brainwashed into thinking that
it's a lot of people, right? Yeah, people will look back on these movements and, you know, these things that they admire and how brave they were, you know, and they look at that but then they look at the current moment and they see the same bravery as annoying as just being melodramatic,
Right.
and it's that you get the 10 years or so out to develop that nice shine on it, and well, I guess probably more than 10 because we're still having Colin Powell talk at the DNC.
Dude.
So
Like,
I know.
like
I
John
saw that and I
Kasich,
was like, sure, of course. Maybe he'll
oh,
play back the hits and once again tell us why it was good to invade Iraq. Maybe that'll be what he'll do.
I really don't understand. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to like take a sidebar to go. Like, I do not at all understand why the Democratic Party is doing what they're doing right now. Like, and it's funny to me because now I'm seeing like all of a sudden you're seeing like a weird reuniting of like Warren supporters and Sanders supporters, and like there's like everybody's kind of coming back together. They're like, hey, no, screw you guys, like because it's ridiculous. Like,
I mean, I think it's kind of it's that like they're trying to do a like, oh, Trump is so bad that even these guys think he's bad is kind of clearly the messaging they're going with, which tells you where their priorities are at.
yeah,
And it's I see what they're doing, and it's like it's maddening, but yeah, that's they think they have a winning. They either think they have a winning thing with that, or they don't want to win. I don't know which.
Right. Well, and it's like, I mean, I think, it's like power protects power, and absolute power protects power absolutely. I mean, like, I think about it, and it's just like, look, like, I don't know the guy, so I don't know too much about it. I need to learn more. But what is Denny Ruprecht, who like he like spoke at the convention, it's like up and coming Democrat, and like I don't like I've been like in contact with a decent amount of progressive people over the past few months, like just doing this show, and like I don't know this guy. And come to find out, like he supported Biden back during the primary. And I'm just kind of like, okay, so like here's like you can watch in real time these people like harvesting the new crop. Like this isn't even it's really like to me, I think like a part of me is like, well, I'm glad because like and on the flip side, like, okay, in my town this past weekend they were all over the country, but there was like a pro police rally. Which is it was quality, but like they got like they got the son of like this guy who is I think he was like the vice president or the president of like an American steel company, like steel manufacturers, and like kids like if I were to go and look at his Facebook, I'd probably find like a whole bunch of photos of him with a really long beard, like hiking a trail somewhere, or like jumping off a cliff into a quarry, and
really nice blue water,
Right. And then at the same time, now mind you, the same family, his older sister, who's like graduated a year ahead of me, ended up like marrying one of ended up marrying Brody Jenner for a period of time. Like,
oh wow,
yeah, like randomly. So like, look, like these people, like it's ridiculous. So this kid shows up to this. He like organizes this pro police rally in town, and the photos, right? He's like all cleaned up, and he's wearing like this nice suit, like he's like all official, and I'm just like, like, oh, this looks like a future leader, and it was just ridiculous.
And there's other ways that you can see it with like I remember there was like a group that was talked about as like another squad that was like all people who were former intelligence, like former CIA and stuff like that. And like there's been kind of you look at how many Democratic candidates there are that are like very noticeably former intelligence, former army. There's like
Yeah.
Amy McGrath. There's like it's like kind of an obvious group that's being like sort of pulled together to like be who they want to be for the future of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
You know, it's I mean, it's kind of clear from how they treat AOC that they're not exactly happy, but they've sort of accepted that they can't just very actively replace her. You know, she's just
Right.
too much of a main figure at this point. But it's kind of clear where they want to go, and you know,
Yeah, and
it's just
it's happening inside the state too. Like it's not just like it's not just a national thing. Like we do have to deal with
right.
it
Yeah,
internally as well. So I mean, I know Sebastian
exactly.
Fuentes was calling for a new Democratic Party chair yesterday, which I thought was
Mm-hmm.
hilarious. So that's that's always good to see
Yeah,
that, like hopefully we'll get to ride a movement of trying to update that leadership. But
oh, and update the Secretary of State while we're at it. The guy who's been at it for like
yeah.
4 decades at this point. Could
Dude,
just I can't.
I
I
don't
always get so
understand the
mad when I
man's
think about that.
sentences. Like
He's the one who got us onto cross-check. He was on Trump's like completely fraudulent voter fraud thing. He's just so unhelpful.
yeah. No, I'm like, and I could go for like another hour on just Secretary of
Yeah.
State stuff, but okay, so like I do want to just kind of like I want to get to like a couple other things because I know that you got to
Right.
go at noon, and I want to like um
Yes, I do have work.
right, but yeah, because we all got to get back at it, but so
Uh-huh.
I guess like I guess quickly like you read a lot, and I'm curious like as to like wh- why do you feel like we brought it up earlier, like it's important to read what people thought before us, and like
Mm-hmm.
why do you feel like that's important? Like why do you feel like that is an integral part of having a successful left movement, and why we can't just like barrel into it without knowing what happened before us?
Right. I mean, baseline, there's a lot of like, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You know, you don't want to put a lot of thought into trying to figure out something when that thought has kind of already been done. It's just sort of silly on a level, and it's good to do that. I mean, I know I need to work on it. Like, I've been reading sort of a weird combination of like true crime, terrible Christian fiction I read as a teen, and like some romance. So I've been, but even from that, I've been able to draw some stuff. Like I read about the Scott Peterson case, and there's like details in that where it's just another instance of like police incompetence. The detail that was crazy to me was the mistress in the case reached out to the police and heard nothing back and had to call them back again. And I'm like, this was the lady who was like one of the big turns in the case, and they didn't call her back. It's like, come on. So you can, even from that stuff, I think, pick up things. But yeah. I mean, more importantly, of course, you should be reading theory, and I think there needs to be an effort to sort of help with that being more accessible. Like
Mm-hmm.
audiobooks are great for me. I know when I struggle with the like contents of something, having it read out loud helps me out a lot. But yeah, it's always worth making the effort to do that, because then you don't find yourself, like I said in the beginning of this kind of rambling answer,
Yeah.
you don't find yourself reinventing the wheel,
Right.
because it
Do you
just ends
guys
up being
do you
an
guys
exercise of like doing what's been done before, and we don't have to do that.
right,
We have how many
exactly.
history behind us? Like,
Has Southern like NHDSA considered doing like online reading groups or anything like that to go like try and push out any of the ideas more, like, or discuss them or try and disseminate them? Like I know that oftentimes like okay, like I think it like, I think I heard like Ben Burgess say this recently. He's like, capital's not exactly a page turner. Like it's really like like some of that stuff can be really unwieldy, and like I
right,
know
right.
that like having a space where you can either like watch people hash out what's happening in that text or to actually participate in it directly. Like I know that can
Right,
help
yeah.
in like just like comprehension of the ideas. Is that something you guys
Mhm.
have like considered at all?
Yeah, I know that we've before had a few reading groups. I think the struggle, I mean, it's probably not unique to New Hampshire, but I know it's unique. It sort of feels like it is. There's that like trying to find a space when to do that stuff, and I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people sort of are at this point going between either, work or like kind of losing it because of the
Yeah.
pandemic. So
Yeah. No, I hear
hopefully,
that.
I believe we've got some things on the horizon with like a night school. So I think we're gonna hopefully
Awesome.
be doing more stuff like that
Cool.
soon. But a lot of it is right now. I think we're focusing on building up and like getting out the two big things we're focusing on is I think we're sort of coming back to doing more housing stuff, and we have a handful of candidates for state rep that we've endorsed, which we're doing phone banking for. We've got a phone bank today,
Awesome.
which I will
Yes.
definitely post about on our main account again.
Yes. Yes. I'll try and get some links up for that as well for folks if they want to
Yeah,
hop down, get
yeah,
involved,
definitely.
like it there's a lot of like there's a lot of endorsements going around on the left right now. Like it's good to see this is like
Mm-hmm.
the season, so it's nice because it's helping
Right,
define
yeah,
the
yeah,
lines for everyone. So
yeah. And I know. I myself am very supportive of Andrew Valinsky. I'm really excited for the event he has. It looks like on Sunday in Nashua.
mhm.
So I'm definitely going to make it out to that. It's sort of
Awesome.
he had a car rally thing where they use cars to like help with social distancing, and
Yep.
it was in Manchester.
Yeah,
And
that's
so I'm definitely.
I mean I had Andrew on it was week before last, and that was that was a really fun conversation. I was very happy to do that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, he's great. He's
yeah,
great. Very. I before everything happened with things being shut down, because of COVID, I made it out to like one or two events. I saw him at the Hudson office, the Bernie office, and he was
yeah.
just walking by, spotted my Andrew pin. He was like, "I like your pin." He's just super easy to talk to, and he has like a willingness to fight that a lot of the sort of establishment of like New Hampshire Democrats just doesn't have,
Right.
and I highly respect that. It's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think like, that's I think it's interesting how people will like I mean, I've definitely heard in a number of instances that it's like, yeah, well, he can be kind of abrasive to certain people, so he doesn't necessarily have as many friends or this or that. And my response is like, good, man. Like, good. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Like that's great
It's like,
news.
wow, running
Like
back this argument about Bernie again, huh?
yeah, like
It's the
okay,
same
like
exact thing they said there, where it's like it's that like that's like he's not a Democrat bullshit that they pull on Bernie. Where I swear, you tell anyone that other than people who spend all their time are in Democratic circles, only doing like Democratic things. Anyone else is like, sounds good to me.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, I just like yeah, I don't care if he rubs people the wrong way. Like this isn't about like how much you get along with somebody. Like it's about
Right,
whether or not you
right.
do the
It's
right thing
like
for people. Like
it's like the stuff that the Republicans pull all the time, where they're like, I can't believe you would politicize the politics of this political issue that deals with my political record in this political race. Can't believe you politicize that. It's like, can we just stop acting like by being a like public facing figure running for political office, something can be politicized? It's already there,
yeah, yeah, like we made it. It's you're not like
Yeah,
you can't it's like yeah, it's like you're past a certain point and you're like, okay, we got to just like
yeah.
totally like accept it and like,
Exactly,
try
exactly. Or you
and
see it in
immunize
The
ourselves.
Markey Kennedy race, where
Oh God.
they're like Ed Markey. Don't you feel ashamed that random people on the internet were tweeting mean things at Joe Kennedy? And I'm like, I think the Kennedy will be okay.
Yeah,
I
right.
think the
Like,
Kennedys have faced worse than mean tweets.
oh wow.
Like, come on.
That's rich.
This guy, and it's like I think even he himself has been through like worse things in his personal life. I think he'll be okay. And it's that, like, somebody really needs to tell these politicians to stop going on Twitter and like reading the like teenagers who are bored and currently waiting to see what's happening with school, just like being mean because that's Twitter.
That's yeah, for real.
It's just like it's such a joke. Also, I did just realize I mentioned on my Twitter account that we were talking about the tent revival, so I definitely want to talk about the tent revival.
Oh yeah.
So fulfill that.
Yeah, no, well, and that's like, I think that's actually a good, like, I mean, okay, so this is an like, we can probably kind of bridge these two topics at the same time, because like I think like, okay, as a Christian socialist, being like in what is definitely like the leftist portion of the left right now, I think in this country, like I would say, aside from being a full-blown like Stalinist, like, like I don't.
I did get compared to Stalin once by a former state rep.
Good, gotta love it.
It was really randomly on Twitter. It did not make sense. He said that I was like Stalin in my politics and my hair, and I still don't understand the hair part.
That's, oh gosh, yeah, well, just cause red, right? Like, even though that's the color of their party.
I literally stared at my icon that I had at the time. I'm like, it's not even that red. It's really red now.
Oh man. So like, seriously though, like, as like why, like, what's your take on sort of like the left pushing away, like, not just Christians, right, but like all religion, right? Whether it's like a monotheistic religion, whether it's like an Eastern religion. I mean, I think there's probably issues in there with like white co-opting of Eastern culture. Like, that's a totally different conversation in a lot of ways. But like, realistically, like if you want to take sort of like the mains, like the main religions that people tend to complain about, right, like Islam and Christianity, like what is the importance of like the left finding a way to overcome their anxiety of religion itself and see it as like a neither good nor bad thing, just a neutral thing? Like, I mean, that's how I view it. So like, to me, it's like, it depends on the people you have that are utilizing it, right? Like, it's so I mean, I just love to hear your take on that, and then like, how would you connect that to the sort of like religious extreme that the Last Reformation people are going to in their particular instance?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I really want to say is I will never complain about any sort of treatment that I get as a Christian, because I will never experience the kind of thing that you experience as a Muslim in this country. I will never be wiretapped. I will never face anything where an FBI agent tries to entrap me. I have a lot that I can be thankful for in the way that I'm treated, and I think a lot of people get frustrated. A lot of other Christians get frustrated with the way that some people can act, but I just can't bring myself to, because there's so much worse that could be happening, and that's sort of the big thing I want to emphasize. And I think a lot of people are understandably reacting to the sort of state religion of sorts of Christianity, of being, the Donald Trump holding up the Bible as he like has the people like sprayed with tear gas. It's the weapon that it has been used as. And as someone who was a kid in the 2000s, I remember how it was so felt that, like, as a Christian, that you support George W. Bush, that's just how it is. And I think not abandoning that is important, because you want to break that logic. That's something that shouldn't be. It's bad, And I think that just giving that up is admitting, it's sort of just stepping away from a sort of swath of the population, which, I mean, polling does show how, how people vote, but like, I don't know, I just, maybe I'm biased because that includes me, but I just think that there's ways that you can get to people. I mean, my brother tends to be more centrist, but he said that he and his wife, they like really considered voting for Bernie because they've got student loan debt, and the idea of that burden being taken off of them was an incredible relief, and it's I guess it's sort of a, I just feel that it's, and to me it's on a personal level, it's too important to just give up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, I guess, it's like, I always just, for me, I think about it, right? Like, I think about it in terms of like that's really, it's interesting to hear that perspective. And, like, as somebody who doesn't necessarily prescribe to any specific religion, like, I'm not like an atheist or anything like that, but I guess I just sort of like, I'm on my own continuum, as it were, with my own spirituality. And as somebody in that place, who's mostly interested in just like, I want everything to be better for everybody, it's like hearing something like that as like a perspective from somebody within like what historically I would observe is sort of like a more authoritarian religious structure, to hear somebody from that tradition say like, it could be so much worse, like, for me, and I need to keep all of this stuff in perspective. Like, that's a really heartening thing to hear. And I think about it, I'm like, okay, so like, why is it that I run into atheists who are shittier than that? Like,
I do really feel that a lot of people are understandably, genuinely have experienced huge amounts of pain and trauma from the church. And, there are ways I have too, things that I have been through that I've dealt with over the years. And so that's why I'm not, I get annoyed when people get sort of overgeneralized, but I understand where they very often are coming from, and it's one of those things that I try to keep in centered in my mind, because I think it's very understandable often.
Right. And I mean, like, how, like, what do you find yourself saying in those situations where it's like, yeah, like, I'm on your side, but you're rejecting like my experience? Like, have you found ways to sort of like connect with a leftist that's super anti-religion and kind of like get them off the ledge a little bit about it? And like, and what was that conversation like?
Well, that's the interesting thing about being in New Hampshire. Having grown up in a very evangelical circles, I know for a fact that we are very unchurched. So it's sort of just how it's been. But I also did go to I went to a private Christian school, literally first grade all the way through the end of high school. So I kind of was in a bubble for a very long time. I then went to Southern New Hampshire. So, I've gotten out of that bubble a little bit more, but I guess I haven't overly run into that. And I guess I myself, don't feel the need to take offense so often. I think I've found people are more likely to be like, oh, I don't mean you when I say that. I'm like, no, I get it. I was like, it's cool. You're good. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Because I know that a lot of times it's that sort of, they're talking about power structures, they're talking about, it's like when people say, okay, boomer, they're not talking about your super sweet grandpa who was a union man his whole life, who loves Bernie. They're not talking about him. They're talking about the like specific sort of structure of like the wealthy, housewife who screams at the cashier. It's like it's generalized, but they're referring to something specific.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of, I mean, we'll last sort of like anecdote, and we'll get to the tent revival, folks, because this is silly.
Yeah.
But it's like, it makes me think of like, I'm trying to remember. I think it was in the first episode of Deep Dive that I did with Jonah, where like we were talking about how like the the liberal brand of sarcasm can like make it actually really confusing about what liberals genuinely believe, because like we don't ever explain the joke. Like I think they were talking about like Stephen Colbert, and it was like, well, who is he making fun of right now? Is he making fun of conservatives, or is he making fun of liberals' idea of conservatives? And like,
I have the perfect example. So when I was a kid in my youth group at my church, that's when I first heard of the flying spaghetti monster, and we thought it was hilarious. We're like, the flying spaghetti monster? That's ridiculous. Ha ha ha. Right. Years later, I found out it's a whole like thing with atheists about how like silly the like religion is. And I'm like, oh, we thought it was just goofy and funny stuff in my like little Christian youth group that and it just like it's like the people who listen to Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen, and you look up every line in that song, and it is about a veteran returning from Vietnam who has been failed by the system, who is not getting enough work. And it's like it's that, like, on one hand there's every line in the song, but on the other hand he sounds so happy when he sings Born in the USA.
Right. Yeah.
That, like,
so you just can't help but feel patriotic, and like you're all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what's this song about? Oh, how we mistreat labor and veterans. Oh, okay, right.
Oh, yeah, like I read it off. I was talking to my brother recently, and I offhand mentioned that, and he was like, "What? Wait, that's not what the song is." And I was like, "Let me read you some of the lyrics." And he's like, "Oh."
Yeah. Oh man.
Poor Bruce. I saw some article that was like, we need to replace, one of the songs we play on the 4th of July. Let's get songs that are actually happy about America. And I was like, Bruce, congrats. They finally figured it out.
Right. Yeah, no, if anything, I think we need to double down and play that song more.
Yes.
So, okay.
Can't get enough, Bruce.
Like, oh gosh. So here we go. This is like, I am going to just sort of like, I'm going to put this up and play it for a moment, because like I deeply enjoy even just the beginning of this, and we can have a good chuckle about it. So this is this is the Last Reformation video that went up 5 days ago about how they're like, this is gonna be good, about how they are abiding by social distancing rules. Okay, so here we go.
Hey, I'm standing here in New Hampshire. We have our revival tent up, and the last days have been crazy. We have experienced so much attack. It's really clear that the enemy don't want.
What's up with those
continue.
Zooms?
I actually got a prophetic word a few weeks ago that the enemy will try to stop us before it really gets started, and he will use the COVID-19 to persecute us, and we are seeing that. And we have a tent here, as you can see. You can see here we have the fire thing up there. You can see here we have the exit sign. We even have mask here. We have sanitizer thing. You can see the chairs are social distancing.
Wait, no, okay, but they're not.
They're not. Oh,
like they're not.
That's giving me many flashbacks to the early 2000s. The vibe is way too like Kirk Cameron era.
Like, what's up with the camera work? Like, what are they doing? Like,
I know, it's like he's shooting one of those promo things they do for like a WWE episode. Like all over the place.
Oh no!
But yeah, I'm very not shocked to learn that he's claiming that COVID is like some sort of direct attack on his little tent gathering.
Yeah, and I love that the enemy is using COVID against us. Like,
gosh, yeah. I was honestly not shocked by that language, because I experienced that language for approximately a decade of my life. So that actually sounded normal.
So, like, okay, can you, like, share more about that? Like, I am
Oh, he's
deeply,
talking about the
genuinely
devil,
interested.
basically. It's this spiritual warfare is sort of what he's getting at there. It's this sort of thing with Christians where we have our own sort of language that we have that's does not make much sense outside of Christian circles. It's like all these specific words that you say that, at youth group it makes sense, and then your friends look at you a little funny. So I didn't experience that because I went to a Christian school, but yeah,
right.
I guess.
Is it like an attempt to, like, I don't know, like, because like from the outside to me, it just looks like it's an attempt to like try and like control a narrative that you like.
100%. Yeah, he's basically it's the sort of classic victim complex thing that a lot of conservative evangelicals develop, where it's like, I'm receiving any sort of pushback, that's the enemy trying to stop me because I'm doing the right thing. It's that, like, it's like when somebody does a bad take on Twitter and then they're like, the trolls are out today. I know I made so many people mad. That's how I know I'm right. It's that, but like dialogues, it was very much like cooked up. Well, not cooked up. It's been around for a while, but sort of very intensely put into place in like the 2000s, or at least for me. Maybe I just am thinking of it as that because that was my childhood.
No, for sure. I mean, like, I guess the question is like, so like, I mean, and obviously this is probably purely speculation, but like based off of your experience with dudes like this, or like being in an environment like this, what's the likelihood that he's buying what he's selling? Like, what's the likelihood that he's drinking his own Kool-Aid versus like, what's the likelihood that it's a projection and he fully understands exactly what he's doing and is like trying to better himself? Or is it a combination of the two? Like, where's like
it can get to a place where it doesn't really matter. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he completely buys what he's saying. There's a lot of people who wholeheartedly believe it like that, and who will say that believing it fully. There's also a lot of people who are undeniably charlatans, I mean, Jerry Falwell Jr.,
mm-hmm.
He's clearly full of it. He's pretty clearly just sort of like playing that up to get, fame,
the
supporting
Joel
Trump,
Osteen's,
and then,
like,
yeah, and then going back to his like parties where he drinks black water.
Yeah.
Whatever that was.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, it really depends, because I feel like it's easy to try and pick through the motivations to try and figure out if they're legit or not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those complicated things where faith is very personal, and people are very willing to interpret things the way they want to interpret. And there are some who are just sort of going along with it. Mm-hmm. And there are others who just are true believers,
Yeah. Well,
it gets to a point where it's kind of like not worth it almost to sort of try and put it through a sieve and figure out which is which, because the impact will be the same.
Right. And like, so the other thing too is like, he's always like, he's in his other videos, like he's always talking about like, well, we got to bear fruit, and like the idea of like going out and getting new followers and like spreading the word. And like, what's like, I'm trying to think about the best way to ask this. Like, what's the spectrum of ethics within Christian like circles when it comes to like proselytizing or spreading the word? Like, I mean, it's like, I know that there's varying degrees of like intensity to that, and like I think that this like crosses a line into like, okay, y'all are risking public health right here. Like, we see you. Your chairs are a foot apart. Like, you're not social distancing. So like, where does that line sit?
It drives me crazy. I very, very firmly believe that as Christians, it is our duty to, in this time, not put others in danger. It's like we are supposed to take care of a lot of our duties are to take care of people who are in danger. It's to help shelter the oppressed. And I think that includes not risking people getting COVID. And
Right.
like on a personal level, it actually can get, like, really upset me when I think too much about it, because I've personally accepted that the next time I'll be able to attend church in person is at best winter of this year. I might be able to make it out to some
Hmm.
sort of Christmas thing
Yeah.
at best, and it sucks. I deeply miss my church. You know,
Hmm.
I think I finally figured out where they like live stream, so I'm like, oh good, I'll be able to see, like the I'll be able to do that, because I've been
Right.
live streaming from a different, location, just 'cause I found that one, one. But I deeply miss the community of my church.
Hmm.
I deeply miss, seeing the people that I could see, that, and even just going there, and having that presence of sorts to like be there is, something I really miss. But I've accepted, for the safety of my parents, for the safety of the people at the job, that I'm like, every couple of weeks, like 2 weeks after every like 4 weeks that I spend at home, I'm going back in the office. For the safety of like all the people that I'm around, it's
Hmm.
probably better for me not to go to what, turned out to be a pretty one of the top like super spreaders, which is attending church.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. And it's like, and that's, I'm sorry that you're struggling with that. Like, I can only imagine how
Yeah,
difficult it is to not have
it's
that kind of
tough.
like thing in your life. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, I thankfully have been able to, like I said, find a place to live stream from.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely not the same. And
Right.
it's something that and that's the thing that really upsets me about it, though, is seeing people who, faced with the same thing, are like, actually, it's fine if we endanger people just so I can have that. And
Right.
it's like, you're endangering your own group. You're
Yeah.
putting all these people in danger, and it just,
Well, and
I'm
doesn't
like,
it kind of just like, I mean, I'm not a religious guy, but like, doesn't that kind of go against like the teachings of Jesus a little bit? Like,
right, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
like, I
It's
just,
it's one of
yeah, I
those
don't know.
things where it's like, and you think about it, you're like, there have been people who have like been prevented from being able to attend church for a lot of reasons. There's like, I mean, there's people in Palestine who have churches that they used to attend, where, because of how things have played out in regards to like boundaries and stuff like that, they can't attend the church that they've attended. Their family has attended for generations.
Hmm.
And it's like, and we cry and complain when it's like, for a few months you have to live stream church. It's like, my
Yeah.
parents already have been live streaming church for a while. They like, when they, don't want to drive out, they would just watch the ones that, the church like puts online.
Hmm. Well, and
It's one
like,
of those things. It's just so
yeah.
annoying.
And like, and the other thing too that I think, like, something that I take away from this, and I mean, feel free to correct me if this is not necessarily the best take, but it's like, you don't sit around and argue against religion. That's like that's a battle nobody's gonna win. That's a war no one's gonna win, right? Like, you're never
Right,
gonna
right.
like make an argument against religion. Like, so rather than trying to treat religion like a straw man, accept the fact that most religions, like Christianity, actually give you a blueprint to make like an incredibly socialist argument within the framework, and actually you can have that religion
Right.
fit within that like that political ideology. Like, that's not actually that hard. And like, I my mom said something to me recently. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'm reading this new translation of the New Testament, and like I'm going along, and it honestly just sounds to me like Jesus and his followers were like a bunch of Bernie bros wandering around the mountains." Like, I was just like, I was like, yeah, that's the point. Like, like
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's the verse which talks about how it's easier for, it was like a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's They're the early like religious, like uh, early religious fathers and like saints and stuff like that have talked about how wealth is. I can never remember the exact quote, but there's like this amazing quote from one that's like, talks about how, the what the wealthy have, is stolen. It's thievery from people who, you know, are in wanting. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's the vast stores of food that is, you know, not actively literally done, but it's stolen from the poorest table.
Right.
You know, and it's like there's like very clear things, and like of course the flip side of that is it's very easy for, and I think that with that sort of being hand in hand and being sort of a state religion, there's like sort of a very easy way to like ignore that and just focus
Mm-hmm.
on what you want to. But
Right.
it's something that's still worth talking about and worth underlining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
was
I had a good
great.
time.
Yeah, we
Maybe I'll
should.
actually listen to my own voice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, hey, you did a great job. Like I
Thank
really, I
you.
must say, this was a very like I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
other people will as well.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we got to touch on a whole bunch of stuff, and like I honestly want to have you back because it's like this
Mm-hmm.
was easy to just kind of like fall into talking about all the details. So maybe
Great, yeah.
we'll
Yeah, and
come
I'll
up with
definitely
something for
get
the
you
future.
the link to the event that we have tonight. And I know most
Definitely.
Sundays we have phone banks. I haven't been able to make it because every single time I'm like I'm gonna do it, and then I'm like, oh right, I have a family call that exact same time. So,
Yeah, conflicting schedules,
but
man. It's
yeah.
a hurdle to get over, I tell you. So, but
Mhm.
yeah, hey, enjoy your work day as best you can,
Yep.
and thanks so
Very true.
much. We'll catch you soon, Hannah. Take care. All
All
right,
right. Oh,
everybody.
sorry, I got the 20% battery thing that jumped in.
It's okay. We'll call it here, and then you're good. So awesome.
All
Hey,
right. Have a nice
take
day.
care. Yeah, you too. Later. All right,
Bye.
everybody. That was Hannah Spaulding, co-chair of Southern New Hampshire DSA. Very, very fun talk. Touched on a lot of cool stuff. So we'll be back tomorrow for sure. Also got stuff slotted for next week. Definitely, if you haven't yet, please follow us on Twitter. Subscribe on the YouTube. Hit the little bell for notifications. If you go to patreon.com/locally sourced, become a subscriber and actually help fund this, which makes a huge difference and will allow this to just get better and better. And that's it. It just it makes a difference. So cheers, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Like I said, I'll be back, and that's it. Take care, folks.